Media for having me here tonight, and thank you for coming out to see me talk, and the rest of us here on the panel. I want to talk a little bit about a project. I'm going to do it quick here because we only have about 12 minutes, but I've been working on this project for about 10 years now, which I call Imaging Place, and I'm going to start by showing you what the work looked like prior to moving the work into Second Life, and then I will attempt to log on to Second Life and show you how the work has evolved from that point. Not too dark here. Oh yeah, just test it. Okay, so Imaging Place is a project, like I said, that I've been working on since 1997. It's an attempt to develop the technology, the methodology, and the content for a truly immersive, interactive media based in real places around the world. Really weird sounds coming out of here too.
What we're trying to do now in choral space, online, digital memory, is to have movement through a space be an act of reasoning by which a person could think about and understand and reason about problems in the world.
Sorry, this room seems to be haunted a little bit. Okay, so this is Greg Ulmer, who is a collaborator of mine. He's some of you might know his work. He wrote the book Applied Grammatology and Teletheory, and a number of books throughout the 80s, 90s, and now this century. And he specializes in media theory, and he's been. I want to talk specifically about his work with applied grammatology. Grammatology is a notion that is really kind of founded by Derrida, and then developed further by Greg Ulmer. And the idea is that we can look at the grammatology, which is the theory or the study of the evolution of reading and writing. And applied grammatology is when you take the lessons of the history and theory of reading and writing, which we know quite a bit about, and particularly the transition from oral culture to literate culture has been studied quite widely. And when you take the lessons that can be learned from that transition from orality to literacy and apply them to the current transition that we're going through from literacy to whatever is coming beyond. Some people call it post-literacy. That freaks people out. Greg Ulmer likes the term electracy, but it has to do with this kind of cognitive shift that we're undergoing from literacy to a network culture, fundamentally. And it's been my attempt for the last 10 years to put some of these ideas into practice.
Oh, for example, when we're talking about moving through, drifting through the zone, walking, whether that's a drift or a situation.
Now, the point he's trying to make here, we just don't have time, the 12 minutes that I have allotted, to let him make it, so I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. It's this idea that moving through a space could become an act of reasoning, and part of the case that he's building here is that literacy, the industrialized literacy, has led to such a glut of information that it's no longer practical or even possible to keep track of it and house it and navigate it the way that we did during the literate age. And that we need to develop new ways of storing, generating, distributing our knowledge base, because there's just simply so much of it that we have to evolve new ways of doing that. So what Imaging Place does is it starts from these global satellite images and then moves down to very specific situations that are happening on the ground at various locations around the world. And I'm particularly interested in those locations that are contested, the places around the world where the forces of globalization are kind of gathering and impacting people's lives on the ground. As you navigate the scene now, it's a combination of panoramic photography and digital video. As you encounter people, then the people will talk, and the story of the place kind of goes
I'm interested in figurative language, especially metaphor, and just the translation of metaphor in Greek means to carry across. And if you translate metaphor into...
And again, we're not going to have the time to spend all the time with the narrative. There's over 40 minutes worth of narrative, and this is one location in of itself. This is Richard Smith in Haverhill, Massachusetts, where we start out literally at his home. And this is his home back here. And we make our way on this little walk across the Merrimack River to Haverhill, across this bridge that has been condemned. If I come across these cartographic lines inside the panoramic imagery, I'm able to navigate that space, and you can see the map is keeping track of my orientation and my location as I move.
Learning from.
Now, the other thing that Greg Ulmer is going to be talking about in this particular piece has to do with this notion about mnemonic devices or memory systems, and specifically the mnemonic devices used in the medieval age. That they were very Jesuit monks were very practiced at memory, and the way that they would do it is by developing these mnemonic systems where they were able to imagine themselves in a very familiar situation, perhaps their own living room or their own neighborhood. And if there was something important that they needed to remember, then they would, perhaps the writing of Cicero, they would put that writing on the coffee table, for instance. Then when it came time to recall that information, they could walk over in their mind to the coffee table and in reaching down and picking up the, in their mind, the writings of Cicero, then they would recall the information. So it's these mnemonic devices. Now the point I'd like to make here is that this idea that all technology is, in a sense, well, not all technology, but most of the important technology throughout human existence was this attempt to extend human memory, to supplement human memory.
So if you think about what metaphor is actually doing in language, it's carrying across some sense of meaning from one word to another. That's the fundamental function of language, if you think about it. So, for example, if you have metaphor, my love is a rose, and there's something about the love, your lover, is being compared to a rose. So something about the rose is being carried across to the lover. Now, if you're interpreting that poem, it's up to you what you carry across, whether it's the beautiful smell or the thorn, the sharp thorn.
Okay, so between Richard Smith and Greg Ulmer, there were these situations that would emerge out of this practice of going into a space and navigating it with the digital camera and the video. And in this case, it had to all to do with memory. The idea that the brain is a physical object that exists in a three-dimensional space and has adopted dimensionality in the way that it functions, so that moving from an idea to an idea is like crossing a space, going from one space to another space. And that our forms of knowledge and wisdom dissemination are starting to mimic more closely the way that the brain actually works in terms of neurons and so forth. And I'm just going to back out of here. I'm really at a rush to get through there. There's hundreds of locations in this version of the project around the world. You kind of see it, and it extends even beyond this. But I'm going to rush a little bit because I want to try and see if we can make it into 5 minutes. Do the second slide quick. Now, this idea of applied grammatology, we can say that there's a couple things that we can say about that. Is that first of all, if in oral culture, if the technology to extend human memory was language itself, we tend to think about technology in terms of circuit boards and nuts and bolts somehow, but language itself is a technology, right? So that was the technology of the oral age, whereas writing became the technology in the literate age. And now in the network culture age, it's the digital network itself that is becoming the cybernetic apparatus by which we strap on our brains to extend our memory. Now, we did a lecture series this year with